All right. So here we are, dice keys. This sounds like pretty simple and valuable.
Yeah, it's basically a replacement for a master password. Instead of trying to remember a really long password or using some other mechanism, this person made this basically boggle thing where you roll the dices and put them in a certain array, and that generates a secret key that can be used as a password.
And how do you remember it?
There's some way to you rescan it.
But so you like lock it in place and don't move
Yeah,
these dice. And if you
yeah,
drop it and your kid plays with it, you're hosed.
basically. It's supposed to work like
Uh-huh.
a UT, a two-factor authentication, or it's supposed to be used in many other ways.
You know, this reminds me of I saw something I saw on the Ellen show where people are selling this new password safe that consists of like a book for you to write your passwords in. It's the new high secure password thing.
Yeah.
So
Well,
how is this better than, say, using a random number generator on your computer and then saving that on your phone?
Because you're not messing with dice.
well,
Oh, okay.
also, of course, no, the random number generator on your computer could in principle be rigged, and the NSA did that. So, I mean, dice are better than that. I agree with them there. If you really want random numbers, using physical objects is safer than using a computer.
Oh, there you go. You might. I think it's like $25 to buy
Yeah.
this thing.
It'd be interesting to do some statistical weighing of the different kind of dyes and how they're produced, and see if there's a statistical significance of certain sides landing up versus non,
Right.
and then using that to defeat the whole purpose by having more probable combinations than others.
You can totally do it. I mean, normal dice, it's pretty easy to make ones that have a small failure to be random, but you can also make loaded dice that have a very high chance. So you could certainly do that in principle. You could, and you don't know they haven't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could manufacture these things and then you'd know how to break in everybody's account. That's bloody awesome. That's basically what the NSA did. Yeah, anyway, and then this Mailman. I heard about this Mailman attack.
Yeah, so I'm still trying to figure out exactly what happened here. It has something to do with the forwarding an envelope recipient features of Gmail, but apparently it is possible to create emails spoofed from other accounts using Gmail and completely bypassing all the DMARC and stuff. So yeah, so if you scroll, oh, there we go. Yeah, the Google backend. So we have the like I said, this is all really complicated. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what exactly happened.
Yep.
But it does, like I said, have something to do with the fact that you can sort of alter the mail slightly after it's been sent out.
Yeah, it reminds me of domain fronting.
Right.
Where you make an HTTPS request that has a different domain on the outside and the inside, so it fools your systems. Yeah, and they just patched this apparently.
Yep. There's somewhere in the G Suite admin panel, there's something called an inbound gateway for a domain, and you can change that and get around their whole thing. And
Yep. Yeah, I wonder if this is related to one really common thing people keep emailing me is that you sent me this message and I didn't, because forging the from address is very common.
Right.
But supposedly SPF and these techniques are supposed to prevent that, but apparently not very well. So I got more mind-bending quantum mechanics, which quantum mechanics is an endless source of like science fiction or religion in reality. So IBM has now achieved this, and again, the only point of this one is you learn how to measure the quality of a quantum computer, and there is something called a quantum volume, which I've read several pages explaining it, and I still have only the dimmest clue what the hell it is. But the quantum volume is a measure of how good your quantum computer is. And the one thing I wanted to find is how much quantum volume would it take to actually do something, like crack modern RSA, and I can't find that anywhere. But anyway, that's how they measure the quality of a quantum computer. And they're real proud of the fact that the quantum volume has now moved from 32 up to 64. So this is what you should use to measure the quality of a quantum computer. And it measures the number of qubits and the noise in the qubits. So it's basically how many different qubit states you can reach before they vanish in the noise. So anyway, the only missing thing is at what point will it matter? And I'm guessing it was probably like 512 or so, because I know it's pretty far from where we are before these quantum computers can actually do something like break modern encryption. But anyway, Qiskit, which is what I'm using now. I used to use IBM Qubit. Now I'm using the Python library Qiskit in a project for my students. So they run a simulated quantum computer, and you can calculate the quantum volume of your quantum computer in Qiskit. So I might add that to the projects. You can rate your computer. Anyway, so that's one thing. And the next one is even more mind-bending. This is, now, quantum mechanics messes with our fundamental concepts of reality. And it asks questions that are very much religious and metaphysical, like what is reality anyway? And anyway, what these guys have done is they have made an experiment which shows that one of these three statements must be false. The first assumption is that when you measure something, you measure a single event, and that has one outcome. The second assumption is that you can choose experimental parameters, so you can do a randomized trial where you have 100 this way and 100 that way. You can repeat experiments. This, by the way, is a fundamental problem with all science. The whole concept that you can repeat an experiment is kind of a swindle because, like they say, you can never step in the same Ganges twice. You do something, then you do it again tomorrow. Well, it's really not a repeat. It's tomorrow. Tomorrow is different than today. How do you really know? You totally controlled all the variables, and you never really know that. And the third one is that causality cannot move faster than the speed of light, which is the fundamental principle of relativity. If you could move causality faster than light, then some observers would see the time reversed. So cause coming before effect would not be true. So, and they have proven, apparently, that one of these three things must be false, which in a philosophical way changes the structure of the universe. One simple way out of it, which is probably the simplest and most popular solution, is that we have multiple universes. Every time you make a choice, both choices happen and the universe splits into two universes. That would resolve this. And anyway, but the point is that kind of crazy science fiction stuff is supposed to be unobservable, but here they have an observable consequence of it. And if you could somehow measure that there are parallel universes, then you could start wandering into the science fiction world where you somehow manage to interact with the other parallel universes. So anyway, it's this is like quantum teleportation and quantum computing. We're making progress into this bizarre world where you touch the really deep meaning of reality. And, you know.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this to you before, Sam. When I first found out that there are computers on the internet that take radioactive decay and turn that into true random number generators.
Yeah.
I was using that, all the time in my classes to teach kids about, this stuff. And it didn't occur to me until later that, if this is true, if there are these random events that happen on the subatomic level, on the quantum level, that split the universe into like parallel universes, every time I'd have a math quiz where I'd like randomly generate numbers using, particle decay, I pretty much tore the universe a new one right there.
And it takes me down to Star Trek, where you wonder, if you do this, are you in fact hurting the world, creating some kind of pollution? And you might be.
But the thing is, it would be polluting regardless. But I mean, maybe that's where dark energy comes from. Maybe that's the pollution.
Yes, and this is the fun part of astrophysics and stuff, and quantum mechanics. It turns very much into religion and metaphysics. What is the real nature of reality? What is it when you measure something? How do you actually conclude that anything is true? And anyway, you have to really get to the bottom of these things, and we're getting there. So anyway, it's interesting stuff to study, although none of it has any immediate application. However, this one's great. Making locks from the sound. I thought this was awesome. Making keys from the sound.
Yeah, it is great. It's a really cool area of research, though. I will say, much like the last thing we were talking about, it's largely theoretical, which I've noticed this trend in security research, where it used to be, you better have a proof of concept if you're going to show something. Now, I've noticed that these researchers are presenting stuff more on theoretical grounds, which is sort of interesting.
Oh,
So
they didn't actually make it work. I thought they did.
yeah, I read the paper, and from what I could tell, I thought they did too. I read the paper. From what I could tell, they essentially did a mathematical simulation
Oh.
where they demonstrated it, which is less exciting than actually making it work. But supposedly they've got a funding interest to actually turn it into a real product. So
Yeah, I actually rejected papers at DEF CON when I was reviewing them years ago for just talking.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you have to actually do it, or I don't
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah, it used to, literally be POC or GTFO. Like,
That's right. Yeah.
I will say I'm actually dealing with a situation right now where I have a hypothetical bug in a piece of software where if I were to try it out, it would take a bunch of critical systems all over the world offline.
Yeah.
And I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
And so it's specifically, I have it in there because if it is true, it is so bad that I need to mention it. But at the other hand, if I were to do a proof of concept, I could do some real harm to some real people.
Right.
So I can't, my hands are tied. So
And
there
in
is
some ways, you do need to get the information out so it can get patched, maybe. So that's when you have these tough ones.
Yeah.
There are things where you really can't test it, like economic theory, and this is why some people say that cosmology is not a science, where you study the foundations of the universe and the galaxies and stuff, because you can't do an experiment. You can't build one and then have another one and run them and compare them and have a control group. All you're doing is observing stuff. So that's not science. And in a fundamental sense, it isn't. Anyway.
But I think it's a real interesting area of study, and I think it does speak to the fact that this field is really starting to evolve in terms of this type of theoretical research being more of a recent thing. But it's interesting. So essentially, these researchers are developing this attack that computes the key pattern, the tooth pattern on the key based on the clicks, the sound of the clicks as a key is inserted into a lock. And the idea being that they would be able to recreate a key just based on the sound, sort of like the auditory version of an image attack, where you take a picture of the key and then just cut the key to match the image.
Yeah, sounds great. And there's nothing wrong with theory as long as you understand its theory. I mean, there are theoretical attacks and
well, that's why I wanted to mention that. So.
Yeah. It's like one thing that makes my sister really mad, because she's in medicine, is people keep saying, we found the cure for cancer, we found this, but it's always in mice. And they often forget to put that in the headline. We can do anything in mice,
Right.
But that's not really the same thing. So the proctoring, I heard about this, those crazy proctoring systems.
Yeah, it's a message from the EFF saying it's not okay to essentially put spyware on students' computers just for the sake of ensuring that they're not cheating. And for all of us, that's laughable, because we ask our students to cheat. We want them to think outside the box, and our students don't have to worry about this, because we don't necessarily do this.
Well, yeah, I know one of our instructors wrote an email describing her experience doing this, and she said it's just miserable. You have to clean everything off your desk, get a webcam, wave it all around, have microphones, and it's really intrusive and irritating. And by the way, I'm sure it would be trivial to defeat and cheat anyway.
Yeah.
They do this for OSCP now, I think.
They do. So go on.
Oh, it's just this is something that I feel super passionately against, and I could go on my soapbox about, but sorry, Kaitlyn, go ahead.
Yeah. So when I took the OSCP, the thing that really stood out was not only are they monitoring you while you take it, which is weird because sometimes you forget and pick your nose and stuff, and then you realize someone's watching. The other thing is that when you're taking this test, it's for 24 hours. So someone has a camera in your room for 24 hours while you're, well, I mean, of course, this is my room. Maybe you're doing this in a study, but in my case, it was my room. I'm sleeping, I'm doing whatever, and someone has a camera and microphone in my room watching me at all times. And it's like, maybe we could not do that next time.
Presumably, you can step off camera occasionally for private activities, and therefore you could be off camera looking up answers and stuff, right?
Yes.
So what's the point?
I don't know. And the thing is of course I would have my it's 24 hours, so I get phone calls and texts.
Yeah.
So here I am in front of this camera watching me. Meanwhile, I get a text, I go on my phone and look stuff up while they're looking at me. I don't care.
So what is the point?
I don't know.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
not creepy at all.
that's the other thing. I mean, with students, I think this is a major, major violation of privacy.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is it almost messed me up because I do most of my work in Linux, and of course all the software was designed for Windows, and getting stuff working in Linux, especially proprietary software, is a big pain. So right at the last minute, I'm like, okay, I got to go switch into Windows, install VirtualBox, do everything, and kind of get set up again for the OSCP. So it was not only an intrusion, it was also needlessly kind of a hindrance to my test taking.
Yeah, well, they just had a huge scandal because everybody is cheating on that test because they just leaked out all the answers. So this is probably the classic overreaction. Oh, no, we don't let people cheat, because they totally got busted for letting people cheat.
Well, and I've heard, stories about people doing all kinds of cheating anyway, like, running a looped GIF in the background, or
Running what?
running a looped GIF
video
in the background, or running the software inside a VM so that you're seeing the picture of a different desktop. Somebody went so far as to record actions of themselves doing stuff, and I don't even know how this would work, but record actions of themselves on one test attempt and then running it on a VM and then running that image throughout the next test. And I'm like, I don't even know how that would help you, but.
Well, I would not want to be in the position of trying to make a technological anti-cheating solution and then give it to a bunch of hackers. What's going to happen.
Right.
They're going to forget about your boxes and just hack the anti-cheating solution. This is like when at DEF CON, Google had the app security system where they would run it in a virtual machine on the Google servers to check your app to see if it was malicious. So people, of course, hacked into that system and took over the Google servers, because what else would you do?
I also think it's really invasive because you don't know what the person on the other end's doing with that material, especially, they can take pictures of you, screen cap you throughout, screen cap your space. I think it's wrong.
Yeah. It seems like a terrible idea.
I don't mind an initial hello phone call type video thing to make sure that the place is legit, but at a certain point, the 24-hour surveillance is just too much.
Yeah, it seems like it would be more honest to just make you go somewhere and do it there on their system would be a much more reasonable way to solve this. But
for a 24-hour test, that's not really feasible.
Not really doable. Yeah. But also, the other thing about it is I think that they make you put spyware on your computer that also allows for remote access.
Yep,
and I think that's really messed up.
Yeah. Well, yep. Anyway, I'm glad to see the EFF, as usual, standing up about it. So Fritz Frog. Oh, I think I heard about this. I didn't hear the name. The peer-to-peer botnet.
Right. Yeah. So there's a new peer-to-peer botnet, and they're getting very advanced. In particular, this one goes from SSH to SSH, and
Golang.
Yeah, it's written in Golang. It's multi-threaded, and it's fileless. So even if you get an infection and you turn off your machine, you're not going to find anything. You need to actually kind of do a memory dump. Not kind of. You absolutely need to do a memory dump to even find it. And even then, it's hard to detect it in memory. It's pretty devious, and it's nice to be reminded that a lot of this malware is getting so advanced that traditional methods that we often rely on just aren't going to work to detect it and deal with it.
Right. Sounds like it's got a lot of cool features.
Yep.
Yeah. Neat.
But I want to try making a fileless
Oh yeah.
piece of malware. That sounds actually really interesting.
Yeah. It sounds really nice. And how does it survive reboots then?
That's a good question. I don't know if it even does. It just
Well, it
talks through
says it
messes.
does survive reboots, and that's what to contradict being fileless to me. It looks like it did add a public key to your public key repository.
Oh yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the.
Yeah, it's not might be fileless, but it does make some changes.
Right.
And you could, in principle, like trigger that with tripwire or something, and that would be a way to detect it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's very nice. Yeah. So then I've got. Oh, yeah, I thought this was awesome. Of course, we're all suffering with the smoke, but this video is mind-boggling. They showed what happened from orbit. Let me get rid of the noise. But these are the lightning strikes that were all over. I saw the lightning storm, and of course, at the time, I didn't realize that it was going to light all the fires, but it totally did. There were like 10,000 lightning strikes over a period of 24 hours, and it started all the fires. So I thought this is great stuff. Very interesting to see. And so anyway, I was concerned, like all of us, about whether we have to evacuate. So I looked into sites, and this seemed to be the best, where you can go and you can see where the fires are compared to where you are. So there's an official government site that is incredibly poorly built. It has like 20 fires, and you have to click on each one. It doesn't like tell you where they are or put them on the map. It gives them names that mean nothing. And you have to dig into like the third page of every one to find out the evacuation orders. This is much more practical. You can see the regions and you can see where we are. So even though we're all suffering from smoke, the actual fires are still pretty far away. So it looks okay.
I found even a better map actually that shows you can actually click on web cameras, though some of them are burnt up.
Yeah.
But it's actually it's a Cal Fire it's a Cal Fire map that's pretty good.
Yeah, I found the official Cal Fire map, and it is it makes it very difficult to find out what the evacuation's order. You know, I would think there'd be one that says, here's the evacuation orders, and there's nothing like a list or a map of them at all.
No, there is. It's just, you know, conveniently very hard to find.
Yeah, well, if you find it, let me know. I'll put it on my home. I would like to make that easy for everyone to find, because I keep wanting to know if I should evacuate, and there's no channel of any kind to listen to that would give me. The only thing I found was there's a Twitter feed which has them, so I put that here on my page for the time being.
Sam, are you subscribed to the local alerts thing on your cell phone? Okay, well, after this, I'll make sure you're subscribed, because they'll tell you if you need to evacuate.
Oh, if you have like a link or something, you can put it in the chat.
Yeah, no, in fact, I can sign you up myself.
You can sign up other people. This sounds like that nothing bad could happen there.
I was thinking the same thing. But honestly, it's because it is an emergency line.
Yeah.
The worst you could possibly do is sign people up to get alerts that they need to leave in the event of a fire when they never signed up for that. So that's not too.
Oh, that's not the worst you could do. You could sign them up for all these alerts in other nations and stuff, in other states that aren't relevant to them.
Well, okay,
they're getting driven nuts, and maybe you could find a way to issue alerts. Anyway, but that's right. I'd like to be on such a thing. I'm thinking I go to sleep, and if there's like an evacuation while I'm asleep, I would never know. This kind of sucks.
Yeah, I'll get you the information after the.
Okay, thanks. Yep. Anyway, so then Liz has got virtual classes. Okay.
Yeah. So the hackers are targeting the students going back to school.
Those darn hackers.
Yeah, not a big surprise there.
Well, the Zoom bombing I know about. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we knew about the Zoom bombing, but also lots of phishing attacks. One of the things I thought was interesting was one that happened this year where they were fraudulently using student email accounts at Stanford to apply for loans. And that was one that I hadn't heard about yet.
You know, what's funny is I see the farmer redirectors and stuff. There's a bunch of attacks that exploit the fact that universities are typically trusted and EDU accounts are trusted. And I don't know why, because they're the least secure, frequently hacked, frequently abused. I don't know why you would have credibility because you come from an EDU account, but you do
Right.
for some reason.
I know. I think it's totally insane.
Yeah. But of course, there's, as we know, a bunch of our students are at home and they have a lousy internet connection and their computer is no good. And they're, of course, vulnerable to every security threat in addition to everything else.
Sure.
Yeah. And then, so we've been there. So the phishing scams, Google and Amazon.
Google and Amazon are at the top of the food chain when it comes to most phished, speaking of.
Oh, I thought it used to be eBay. Half of all the phishing emails in the world used to be eBay.
Oh, now it's these two.
Oh, wow. Google.
Yeah, the WhatsApp and Facebook and all these others. But yeah, Google and Amazon are the top two that are getting phished or using to phish people.
You know, this reminds me, these simple things that aren't very technologically exciting are the biggest risk. There was a John Strand, famous guy, IR, gave a talk yesterday at the Instant Response Conference I was at. And he gave his talk goes like this. He said, I did like 300 companies helping them respond to their breaches. And here's my recommendation. I got two recommendations. The first one is firewalls. Turn on the firewall. They typically have it turned off. This is bad. They would be so much better off if you turned on the firewall. And the second thing is Teen Vogue. Teen Vogue tells you use 2FA. Do it. Why is it that you have to go to Teen Vogue to get your cybersecurity advice? And I was so glad to hear that because I noticed the same thing like 2 years ago. Teen Vogue has this really good cybersecurity stuff. And I didn't expect it to come from them. But the fact is, they have good articles about this. Cybersecurity, lockpicking, ethical hacking, they're like a leading how to protect you source of news, more than all the blah, blah experts with their binary exploits. How to do like the 5 simple things you ought to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
That's funny.
That's what they all say. If you would just fix like the top 10 stupid problems, that would be most of what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so then we got Uber Eats.
Yep. So this reminds me of Office Space. Again, a movie that gets brought up a lot in our discussions. So in Office Space, there was an attempt to defraud the company by using the whole round off 1 cent trick and then put that on another account. And this is sort of the opposite. So instead of defrauding the big company, Uber, the big company, is defrauding the workers by doing the exact same thing by rounding down all the miles that the Uber drivers are driving so that they can get less tips.
Yeah, I've heard studies that say this is the #1 form of crime in the world is wage theft. The #1 crime is employers do not pay their employees the wages they deserve. And that adds up to more than all the other theft.
Yep.
It makes sense because obviously you could do that. And why not? You'll just save money and most people won't notice. They won't be able to do anything. It's sort of like all the sexual exploitation that happens at work. You can abuse your employees and a whole lot of them will just put up with it because you've got some power over them.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean,
anyway, crime is a thing, not just for the little hackers that are running around doing their, doing email exploits. The big companies are also, hacking the employees to do some wage theft crime.
And then you go to the large scale, they're just like rigging the political system to get gigantic tax breaks and stuff. It's like, that's like, Scott Galloway had a quote last week. He said, the #1 way to produce value is theft. That really works. Like the nation of China, just steal everything from America is the fastest way to grow your economy. And it totally is.
I don't.
Yeah.
It is. I wouldn't mind China stealing our stuff, had they just had this kind of open policy for themselves, or continue to have an open policy for themselves, like, what's private information? We don't understand that. Let's just share everything. And the Americans aren't, so we should hack that. That's fine. Except that as soon as they started growing in their ability to produce and manufacture their own intellectual property, they're suddenly, oh no, we need intellectual property rights now.
Well, yeah, that's why everybody kind of has the same pressures. This is the good thing about the Trump administration. There's nothing exceptional about us. The reason why the Germans were Nazis is not that they're worse people. It's that there was a pressure to go that way, and they submitted to it. And the same thing happens here. And so it's just, when you're the poor person, stealing from the rich seems like the logical thing. When you're the rich person, suddenly this doesn't seem like a good thing anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of consistency in your beliefs. I totally embrace the ideas of different cultures, having values of different items or different intellectual properties, differently. But it's another thing when it's like, oh, when we're poor, we don't value intellectual property, but now that we're rich, we do. And it's,
well, logical consistency is not really necessarily the best thing in public policy. It's more adapting to the constantly changing circumstances.
True.
Yeah. Anyway, so then I've got just the political corruption, which is mind-boggling. I mean, in addition to the post office, which they're sabotaging, which I didn't even put here, they're ruining the census. Trump wants to make sure that the next census count happens early so he can gerrymander the results and lock Republicans in. And he also very much wants to make sure that they undercount minorities and immigrants. So now they have cut the staff. They've now hired only 150,000 people when last year they hired 750,000 people. And they have been unable to do their job because you can't really go door to door and knock on people's doors anymore the way you should. And they've decided they have to finish like a month or two early. So the census is going to be a disaster, just like the mail-in voting, if Trump can manage to sabotage it, which apparently he has, because they got the postmaster to destroy the equipment. So even though he's before Congress saying, oh, gee, I'm sorry, I'll knock it off, he has already destroyed the equipment. So they can't deliver the ballots. So it's this is we were talking about this last night with my students. We really are facing the end of democracy. Trump wants to have more terms. He's following Putin. He wants to make himself a king forever, and he's rigging the election in many ways. And the other one, of course, is now we had the Republican report came out showing.
I got a quick question before we move on. I know why it's bad for them to undercount minorities and why it's advantageous to the government to do that. What I'm not quite clear on is how what he's doing here will help lock in the Republicans, like you're saying.
Oh, the gerrymandering. After you get the count, you then assign the new congressional districts. See, every 10 years you have.
Oh, okay.
And so you have like a city, and you have to have one representative for every 100,000 people, and now you draw the map. And this is why the Republicans, like Trump, lost by like 3%, so he won. Democrats have to win by like 5 or 10% of the popular vote, or they lose, because the districts are carefully designed. So if you have like a lot of Democrats, they put them all in one district, which is now 100% Democrat, and they watered down the Republican districts, so there's like 52% Republicans in each of 10 districts. So you can make it so that the minority rules, where basically like South Africa was, where you have a small minority that oppresses a large majority by manipulating the game so they can never get on top. That's the situation we're in. And Trump is getting guided by Putin in regular phone calls, his hero, of how to do this more and more. Putin just a month or two ago got himself declared permanent king forever of Russia. And Trump is trying to do the same here. He's openly said it. He feels like he deserves another 4 years, and frequently plays a video of him getting term after term after term because he doesn't think there should be any term limits that apply to him. And there won't be any real elections. There'll just be fake elections. And the Russians totally rigged it, and they're totally rigging it again. And the evidence has all come out, and the Republican Senate investigation, which I thought would whitewash it, didn't. But the Republicans have figured out the same thing that's true of Trump, is nobody looks at anything except the FAQ. So the report says the Russians absolutely conspired with Trump's people. There was collaboration. It was absolutely illegal and rigged as hell. And then they put on the front, their press release is there. It proves that Trump is exonerated, and that's all anybody will notice. So it's, anyway, we're watching this stuff. And then the amazing thing is they caught Bannon. Bannon was the mastermind behind rigging the election in both the Brexit and American Trump winning. Both of those were done on Facebook with Bannon masterminding it all. And Bannon also understood the personality of Republican voters in America. He said, Trump is the guy I need to push forward my racist agenda because he's like Archie Bunker. People love him and he'll win, which he put up Trump as his puppet to push forward his helter-skelter agenda. He wants to create a race war and he feels like that's what should happen. And he was the smart guy, but he just got caught. He's arrested for financial fraud. He built this, he really wants the wall, like Trump wants the wall. Trump actually wanted to abandon the wall, but his voters love it. That's his number one thing, is building the wall. And he got independent people to donate $25 million to build the wall, and then he just took the money and spent it on his own personal expenses after promising that he was a volunteer and wouldn't take any money. So they arrested him for financial impropriety. So that's remarkable. He was the mastermind behind all this.
Maybe he should go back to selling World of Warcraft gold.
Right.
He serves a gold mine.
Federal prison seems like a good place.
Yeah. No, before he was doing politics, he was selling World of Warcraft gold.
Oh, well, Trump can just pardon him like he did all the rest. And that's also a crime.
What'll happen, I imagine.
Yeah, that's why it's, if we have another 4 years of Trump, I think I'm getting on board with Joe Biden and other people saying that'll be the end of democracy. It'll never be another election. We'll just be a puppet regime like Russia.
Yeah.
And that might very well happen. Trump's back up to the popularity again that he had before.
Well, yeah, it blows my mind. It blows my mind that people don't care that he's selling us out to Russia and China. Yeah, I would never have thought that, especially his constituent base would go for that, but they totally are.
Yeah, I thought Republicans were against Russia. I thought they wanted to protect the troops, have family values and stuff, but apparently none of that. All they want is someone to make them feel like they're better than somebody else, and they can sneer at the liberals, and they're willing to have their own family slaughtered for the joy of feeling superior.
I don't like getting too political for various reasons, but I will say that it is frustrating that the same people who we see put on these huge patriotic displays, where they're carrying their guns and they say it's their patriotic duty to fight up against fascism and all this stuff, are just okay. We're dismantling the USPS for obvious, political, to get votes and rig the political system. And when actual police state came, the federal government came and started like arresting and shooting rubber bullets at peaceful protesters, the people with the guns who are like, we're going to go after the tyrannical government, we're just kind of like, maybe
we're
maybe
like
this time.
we'll back up the federal police.
Yes.
Like we're fully on board with the fascism. That is mind blowing to me, and I'm having trouble having trouble understanding it. I would have thought that the government. I would have thought that the Republicans would have been upset with Trump for what they've done to the party and their like credibility, but apparently it's not a problem for people.
Maybe they will later when he's out of office.
I think the miracle, which none of us saw coming, is when you convince them that the news is all lies. So now they live in a science fiction world. They believe that none of this happened. We're not rigging the election. There is no virus. The post office is just fine. These guys are all being framed. Everything in the court says is a lie. Everything scientists say is a lie. And everything you see in the news is a lie. That's what they believe. That's how you do it. And that's a kind of propaganda that I had not considered.
Right. Well, I mean, I've always thought it would be a good idea to get rid of the Second Amendment, but make sure that people can still get guns, because I do think that there are people that need guns. I just always had this idea that we really need to get gun culture out of America. So disconnect the whole idea that that gun ownership is part of being an American. It is a tool. And you might need that tool if you are a farmer. I get that. Or if you are a hunter, or even if you just like hunting, that's fine too. But of course, the counter argument to that is, well, if there's fascists, we need to be able to arm ourselves and have these militias and stuff like that. But we've seen what happens now. And that argument now has completely just fallen apart.
Oh, sure, but I don't think it ever made any sense. But I mean, this is
No,
like,
of course not.
this is like tobacco and alcohol. You can't take guns from Americans. They
No,
won't-
I'm not saying take guns away. In fact, I think that the ability to get guns should be very much protected. I just don't think that we should have the Second Amendment, which is a very weird argument, I know, but it's.
It is. I haven't heard that argument. I mean, I probably wouldn't mind it, but I don't think there's any hope of it.
Yeah, I just never saw the need or the ability for guns to actually protect us against fascism before. And as you said, it is a silly argument, but people are very adamant that no, we need our guns to protect us from fascism. But here we have an actual case study that we can refer to, and no, guns did not help one bit.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's we're watching exciting history, and I think the next election will definitely determine the future of the country. And if Trump wins, I'll probably have to leave. We'll see what happens. Anyway, so then Uber. Oh, I'm glad to see this happening, because this thing Uber did was really terrible.
Yeah. So speaking of Uber and corruption, this story is just amazing to me.
Yeah.
So this guy was the chief of security at Uber, and when they got hacked, he covered it up by paying the hackers $100,000 out of the bug bounty program.
Yeah.
Which is more than they'd ever paid to any actual security researchers through the bug bounty program by a lot.
Yep.
And then covered it up and had them sign an NDA saying they hadn't stolen any data when they had.
He works at Cloudflare now?
Yes. After he got
that.
I was getting to that. So he, the former CEO, the problematic one, Travis, he knew about this and covered it up.
Yeah.
And so the successor CEO fired him when she found out about it, and then he went to go work at Cloudflare as their CISO. So
that's not good.
No. So now he's actually been indicted over this. There's been an ongoing like crazy federal investigation into it and everything else. So
Oh man. So I think Cloudflare is going to have to fire him, and they're going to have to apologize and explain what the hell they were thinking.
Right. Well, and you know, I think it's also very plausible that they had no idea about all this stuff, because all of this has been pretty secretive. All the investigation up until now has been pretty secretive.
Oh, I heard about it a year or two ago. It was hilarious when they got hacked and they tried to pretend it was a bug bounty after the fact and claimed they didn't have to disclose it. That much I knew. Now, this Sullivan guy, have we seen him talk at DEF CON or Black Hat or something? I don't know him. It seems like we should know a guy like this.
Maybe. I can't. It's quite possible. But you know, we've seen a lot of people talk at those. So.
Yeah. But I don't actually see the top executives that much, because they go to the talks I don't go to. But I sort of thought I should at least know his name or his face or something.
Sure. Anyway. But I thought this was pretty interesting, because also government usually doesn't care at all about this stuff. They just let it go. So I thought it was interesting that he's actually getting charged for it.
Yeah. I've also seen people getting charged for inadequate security a couple times. So the government's beginning to take baby steps towards actually enforcing some idea of security standards.
I'm just wondering about the selective enforcement, you know, like how do they even choose who to go after at you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's pretty much whoever didn't contribute enough money to a campaign right now. But, you know, after they have a few cases, maybe they'll have some kind of system.
Right. But I thought their logic was ridiculous. where they said that the logic behind paying them out was to force the hackers into the open to give them their to take the money and that they'd make sure the data was destroyed. And it's like, how I can't follow that logic.
Well, that
on
was the
level.
original thing about ransomware. Ransomware was not a breach. They would encrypt your stuff, you buy the key, you decrypt it, they never have the data. So you don't have to report it as a breach. That was a fairly common belief until about a year ago, when the Sodino Kibe guys started blackmailing people with the stolen data.
Yeah. Well, they knew that they'd stolen it this time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for thinking outside the box to deal with these security issues. I do it all the time, but there's a difference between thinking outside the box and being dishonest.
Yes.
And as long as you're honest about your thinking outside the box, I mean, I once in a while will have to use a offensive hacking technique in a defensive situation, but I let everyone know, you know, I have my evidence lined up why I'm doing this. You know, you make sure everyone's involved and okay and everything. You don't just go and like hide what's going on just to, you know.
And I mean, I think it's interesting. I think it's noteworthy that, you know, I think really what prompted this was the fact that Uber went public. And when you're a publicly traded company, you can't be lying to the FTC about what's going on, because that's a good way to get yourself sent to federal prison.
Well, you can do it if you balance it with campaign contributions to the right people. But yeah, it's
Just be honest, just be open. I mean, and that's a lot of our security issues are stemmed from the fact that people are not open, they're not honest. We've had this model of security through obscurity for way too long. I still see it in practice, in here and there. You just be open. You know, let people look at what's going on, let people know what's going on. And I mean, I'd much rather a company get hacked, not spend a single dime and just let everyone know, hey, we got hacked, here's what's going on, what's happening, then a company like Uber spend $100,000 trying to bribe the people who hacked them and hide the fact that they got hacked. I mean,
yeah, that's right.
Well, and one final point on this too. I mean, it's kind of telling how ridiculous these bug bounty programs are when you're paying the actual people that find the bugs and report them to you legitimately less than you're paying the hackers.
Right. Yeah. Well, we've said that bug bounties, that, you know, that our students shouldn't do bug bounties because of things like this, and this just further helps solidify that.
Yep.
Right.
It certainly is sort of crazy. And that's what we were saying all along. The difference between like cheating and cleverness is hard to find, and where the law is and where right and wrong is gets really upside down and twisted in this space. Another thing I saw, which I didn't put up here, was they had a bunch of Republicans published an article saying don't vote for Trump. And then a bunch of other Republicans said, well, I didn't sign that because the last time you did that, Trump made money campaigning on, look, they all hate me. I'm the right guy. So when you say you hate him and not to vote for him, you actually make him win more, which is like going to drive you mad. Up is down and black is white. What are you supposed to do in that case?
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess I'll stop the recording. Any more comments?
Nope.
All right, I'll stop the recording over here and post that.